This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
The NBA 82 game grind is done, and now the real fun begins. The NBA playoffs are here, and DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered as an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Make it a playoff run to remember with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FIELDGOAL. That's code FIELDGOAL for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Hey, Kristen, how's it tracking?
With Carvana Value Tracker.
What else?
Oh, it's tracking. In fact, Value Surge Alert trucks up 2.5%. Vans down 1.7%.
Just as predicted.
Mm-hmm.
So, we gonna...
I don't know. Could sell, could hold.
The power to always know our car's worth.
Exhilarating, isn't it?
Tracking.
Always know your car's worth with Carvana Value Tracker.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. And on Friday, the 9th of May, it's time for our Friday 5, where we take a look at some of the biggest Nottingham Forest news stories of the week. I'm your host, George Edwards, and I'm going to be joined by the Maradona of the Midlands in a couple of moments. But first, it's over to Jamie Martin for this week's News Roundup.
Hello and welcome to the 1865 News Desk, your top 5 Forest stories of the week. And we start with silverware at the City Ground. Forest B team have won the Premier League International Cup, beating Olympique Lyonnais in a dramatic penalty shootout. The final ended 0-0 and after extra time, but the Young Reds held their nerve to win 5-4 on penalties, with Zach Abbott scoring the deciding winner in the penalties. It's a proud moment for the academy and a sign of the club's growing youth strength, and especially with several of those players pushing for first team minutes next season. In transfer news, Morgan Gibbs-White is attracting serious interest, with Manchester City now reportedly lining up a bid for the Forest talisman. Now, Pep Guardiola sees him as a long-term successor to Kevin De Bruyne now that Florian Wirtz has decided to join Bayern Munich. Forest, however, are standing firm, with the club valuing Gibbs-White at closer to £100 million and viewing him as central to their long-term project. With Europe on the line, it would take a huge offer to tempt him away from the club, or in fact for Forest to be tempted to even sell him. Elsewhere, Forest are amongst the clubs monitoring Liam Delap, currently at Ipswich Town. The striker has a £30 million release clause, with Ipswich's drop confirmed and a summer move now looking almost certain. Forest face competition from Everton and Manchester United, but Delap's age and profile make him an ideal target for Nuno Espirito Santo's system. Off the pitch, Evangelos Marinakis has temporarily stepped away from club duties, placing his Forest shares in a blind trust. The move ensures compliance with UEFA rules, as both Forest and Olympiacos, the other club he owns, are in the running for European football. Olympiacos now confirmed, though, to have Champions League football. The club insists his long-term commitment, though, does remain unchanged. In the news as well, Socrates Komonakis, who's terminated as a director earlier in the year, is now back, and it looks as though he'll be controlling the club while his best friend and also business colleague takes all the directions with his other club, Olympiacos, because of the the UEFA regulations. And finally, though, the race for Europe is heating up. Forest sits 6th in the Premier League, just 2 points behind 5th place Chelsea, with a game in hand. Their 1-1 draw at Crystal Palace kept them in the mix, and with Leicester, West Ham and Chelsea still to come, the Reds are fighting to bring European nights back to the City Ground. That's your Nottingham Forest update. We'll be back with soon more news and updates here on the 1865 News Desk. Catch me on Twitter, or X as it's now known, via I'm Jamie Martin, or wherever you find your social media, Jamie Martin. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you, Jamie. And I'm joined by the Maradona of the Midlands. How are you today, the Maradona? Or tonight?
Oh, I am absolutely capital, George. Capital with a capital K.
Excellent. I love to hear it. So we're going to start with the Youth Cup story that Forest won the Premier League International Cup last night as we talk. Now, I was lucky enough to be there, as I was for the semi-final. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on the game, and then we'll get into a bit of a deeper thought. You didn't watch it, Maradona, did you, yourself?
No, I forgot. I forgot, sorry.
Okay, well, luckily somebody from 1865 Towers was carrying the flag. So in terms of the game, I was actually quite impressed by Forest. I went to the semi-final, as I said, and they approached the game in a very different way. They got on the ball. I think it was a stronger team, actually. They had Joe Gardner in it as well, and there was a couple of injuries for the semi-final. So you could tell it was a stronger team with Forest on the ball a lot, controlling midfield. Leon had 2 chances in the first half, and apart from them, that were 2 big chances, actually. I think they hit the bar, and then the goalie made 1 good save. But that was all Leon really did in terms of goal-mouth action. Forest really controlled until about 60, 70 minutes. And then Jack Nadine, I think it is. Jack Nadine and Joe Gardner both were substituted. And particularly Jack Nadine, for me, as he did in the first game, really controlled the midfield. He was playing just off Joe Gardner as a striker. But after that, Forest really lost control. And Jack Nadine is somebody that I'm hoping could come into the first team forward actually next season and maybe work with the lads, much like Zach Abbott has. But once those 2 went off, Nadine threw a bit of cramp, I think, and similar for Gardner as well. Forest did lose a bit of control. The game did peter out a little bit. And of course, it went to penalties after extra time. And I figured out, Maradona, that of the 5 games that could have gone to extra time this season I've been to, 4 of them have. So classic there from Forest. But in the end, we got the job done on penalties. The first one was missed. I don't know who it was, but he did an Eze penalty from Monday night, except stick it away. It was a good save from the goalkeeper. Then the rest was scored, apart from the potential winning one for Forest that hit the bar. But it was all right because the goalie, whose first name was George, which is what I remembered. I don't remember his last name, but his first name was George. He made the save. And then, of course, it was Zach Abbott, right in front of me, stuck away the winning penalty. So it was a very enjoyable atmosphere. A lot of children there. My little 11-year-old nephew very much enjoyed it. Not nephew, cousin. He very much enjoyed it, as did I and my granddad and stuff as well. So that's my thoughts about it. Maradona, how good is it that we've got a youth team that's working so well together and winning trophies?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's like a prestigious tournament. It's not like a summer thing where they go up and play a team from like Sweden or something, and one from Malta, and another one from Holland. These are like a top clubs I'd actually heard of were playing in this tournament. So yeah, it's good. It's good that they've done it. And it gets the Forest name out there. And obviously, it's a good sign that our youth team players are pretty decent, and hopefully they'll be making their way into the first team come a couple of years' time. And Zach Abbott seems to be like the next golden boy on the conveyor belt after Joe Worrell and Ryan Yates. He's looks like he's going to be the next one coming into the team. And shall I say it now? Future Forest captain. I've said it. I've put it out there. Future Forest captain. So yeah, it's good. It's positive news, and hopefully that feel-good factor can permeate into the first team for the weekend's match.
Yes, I sincerely hope so. And on Zach Abbott, what a brilliant leader for Nottingham. He's 18. He was actually the first Forest player that was younger than me. So when he made his debut against Bristol, what was it, last year, 2 years ago, the dream was finally over for me. But for an 18-year-old lad, he speaks so well. He did a podcast, didn't he, with Haritofalo and Yatesy, and I think it was Nico, was it, about mental health, and spoke so well. And when I met him, Felix got a picture with him, my cousin, at the youth game. He's such a nice lad. Spoke to him for 10 seconds. That was obviously before his Wembley debut. And, he seems very grounded. And for somebody that could potentially, hopefully, be a Forest future captain, or certainly a key part of what we're doing, that is really something exciting. And in terms of sort of the vision into the first team, I really think at the minute there actually is. It maybe faded a few years ago, but you look through the Premier League, Manchester United, I know they've been pretty crap this season so far, and that's possibly why. But they've been giving a few lads some chances this season. You look at Man City even. They've got Nico O'Reilly, who's broke through, Rico Lewis, who's a youth player as well. We've obviously got Abbott on the fringe of the first team, and if we get into Europe, we do have to have, I think it's 4 homegrown players in the UEFA squads. So do you think the players maybe, I mean, you saw how much they enjoyed it, I'm sure, on social media. They absolutely loved winning a trophy. Do you think that's maybe because they see a pathway into the first team at the moment that maybe wasn't there in the last few years?
Yeah, well, probably last night it was just the joy of winning a trophy. But I think there is so much choice for like a good young player. I mean, if they're any good, they've normally got a whole line of clubs fighting to get their signature. So for them to be at Forest, I think probably gives an indication that they do believe that there is a decent pathway there into the first team. And as you say, next season, if we get into European football, we'll need them. We'll need all of them. If you think of how much of a quality player is going to cost, somebody's going to come in and improve the squad. Say, last few seasons, we've been spending sort of 20, 25, 30 million pounds on players like Elliot Anderson and Sangare, and people like that. So there's only so many of those you can buy, maybe 1 or 2 every summer. So if we're going to fill up our squad, a lot of the heavy lifting is going to have to be done from the youth squad, just filling up the numbers, if nothing else. Because sometimes if you're having 2 games a week, you're just going to run out of players. We used to see it sometimes in the Championship, and you see it sometimes now in even sort of teams like Tottenham and Man United. With all the money they've got, they're just struggling to build a team sometimes that's going to be competitive. So yeah, I think there's definitely a bright future for those lads there.
And also, you think back to Forest under Steve Cooper. I remember him coming in, and one of the big drives that he had as Forest manager was to get the youth team, every level of Forest, playing the same way. And I suppose in the Championship days, it was similar to what we're seeing under Nuno, the momentous, counter-attacking, brave style of play and the mentality more than anything. Now, Forest, the youth team, doesn't seem to play that way necessarily. They seemed a lot happier to get on the ball and take control, and I liked that. But it seems that every element of the club is aligned to be professional, to be at a good standard, and to have that winning mentality seeped through them. But obviously comes from the owner and starts from the top and feeds its way through. And for the end goal of Forest, maybe to establish themselves as a higher-end Premier League club and a European club on a consistent basis, I think winning things like this, having that winning mentality from the start is such an integral part. And obviously having players, ex-players like Lewis Grabban, Warren Joyce with such experience, Warren Joyce at youth level and Lewis Grabban at a high-end top football level, it really does both them in a good step. So it's very impressive to see that from Forest. Any final thoughts, Maradona, before we move on?
No, I think you covered it very well there, George. Well done.
For once. Thank you very much. So let's move on to the second story that Jamie discussed with you, which was that I think Morgan Gibbs-White has been linked with a move away to Forest. There's even been something going around on Twitter that apparently his car's been seen in Manchester, but I don't think he'd be silly enough to drive a car that literally had his name in the number plate. I think he has a Range Rover as well, and that looks like it's an Aston Martin or something. So I'm pretty sure that is nonsense. But my thoughts on this whole Man City palaver is that it's them trying to stir the pot, because now it's emerged, and I don't know if Jamie covered this, obviously, in his bulletin, but it's emerged that now, suddenly, on the brink of the FA Cup final, City want to sign Ebery Eze and Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace. Obviously, this rumour came out around the time Forest were playing Manchester City and in their pursuit of maybe taking a European place off Man City. So I honestly think that it is all Man City bound. They're trying to stir the pot. They're trying to take the attention off Forest's on-field stuff and distract Morgan, because I think it's came out that City apparently are confident that Morgan will sign. I'm pretty confident, I don't know the lad, that Morgan wouldn't allow that, particularly that he wants to go to City, to come out mid-season. So how much of you thinks this is true, Maradona, and how much of you think is this Man City trying to put Forest off in their typically non-cheating manner?
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily think it's Man City putting it out there. I think there's a lot of outlets now that need content. And we all do it. We look at a player in a squad, and I think, oh, he'd fit in well there. He'd fit in well at Forest, and you just put it out there. It's that silly season when you got to fill in column inches on various sort of media outlets. So not necessarily from City. Everybody knows that they're going to have a bit of a rebuild this summer with De Bruyne leaving, Jack Grealish apparently sort of falling out of favour. Bernardo Silva looking like his legs aren't as speedy as they once were. So it makes sense. You put 2 and 2 together. Who's been a star player in the Premier League this season and is at a club that might need to sell if a big offer comes in? It's Forest and Morgan Gibbs-White. So I don't think it's necessarily City putting it out there. I think, he may well have been in Manchester as well. I don't know. A lot of people, especially people with money and time on their hands, like to go shopping in places like Manchester, I hear. Not something I've ever done, but they do it at the drop of a hat. They drive off to Manchester, to London to go shopping, these sort of people. They've got time and money, so good luck to them. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's moving to Manchester City. From an outside point of view, it makes sense. 2 + 2 might equal 4 on this occasion, but I'm hopeful that we'll grab that last Champions League spot and we'll keep Morgan for at least one more season.
I'm glad you've taken it better and in less accusative manner than I have, Maradona. It's not something I really want to pander to, but while we're talking about the subject of Gibbs-White in a Manchester City shirt, is that something you think would work? Because I look at someone like Jack Grealish, who was the centre of attention, he was the captain, he was everything about Aston Villa. And Villa have maybe improved and progressed with the money and reinvested it well, which Forest will be looking to do. But Manchester City and Jack Grealish hasn't been the best combination if you're looking from the outside, and particularly the inside of the Manchester City podcast before the semi-final, and they were all saying how, it's not really been a match made in heaven. I think they've sapped every creative juice out of him. They've thrown him out wide, a position he doesn't thrive in. And someone like Morgan, who thrives on space to drive into and thrives on having the ability to make mistakes and then come through them in a system that maybe doesn't give that much freedom, doesn't give that much allowance, and a manager that's so meticulous in a system, do you think Morgan will be a success in a blue shirt?
There's a couple of things there. Pep's got this sort of reputation of being like a horse breaker. So when you get a stallion, you've got to break him first before you can ride him. And he seems to take that approach with the players, especially the creative ones who play off the cuff. I think Morgan has enough talent to do that, though. He seems like a guy sort of willing to learn and do whatever the coach wants. We've seen that at Forest over the past couple of years when he's not necessarily had a glamorous role to play at times. He's just had to be a bit of a workhorse in midfield when we're playing the low block. But I don't think that'll be a problem for Morgan as such. The other aspect is Pep does like to evolve, and he will have seen this season that possession football style doesn't necessarily work anymore. What's happened is with the high number of substitutions you can have these days, the advantage of having possession and passing and tiring out the opposition just doesn't work as well anymore because they can bring on 5 subs, so they can keep on closing you down. So maybe he's had a thought that I'll have to go a bit more direct, and he's done that already with Haaland in the side. So when you got a manager as talented as Pep, all the money in the world which Man City have, and a player as talented as Morgan, chances are more likely than not that it will succeed. But as I said before, I just hope he's willing to hang around at Forest for a bit longer.
And finally on this, if he does unfortunately leave, there's been a lot of talk about how we would go about replacing him, whether Elliot Anderson could fall into that role or whether Forest would have to reinvest. I've seen that Aston Villa potentially have got to sell for FFP, so could Forest maybe sign somebody like Jacob Ramsey? I don't know if that's a bit out there and maybe a bit too far like we did with Anderson last season. On the Anderson thing, I think if possible, Forest have got to try and keep him in the 8 because I thought Crystal Palace showed exactly his strengths. And I said it on the podcast. And if you haven't listened to that, then make sure that you do. That he was just so awesome. He had everything about a number 8, connected Sangare to Gibbs-White so well. And I'm not saying he wouldn't succeed in the 10 because you think about when he replaced Morgan for them 2 games and he was absolutely sensational. I think it was Leicester away, wasn't it? And that was perhaps one of our best dominant away performances. I thought he was superb there. So I'm not saying Anderson couldn't work there, but I think his strength has to be in the 8. And that's such an integral position. So how would Forest go about replacing someone like Gibbs-White, and would they use Anderson to do that, in your opinion?
I think they'd probably have to bring in 2 or 3 players to replace him. I think we've all agreed that the minimum that Forest would have to take in any potential transfer would be at least £100 million. And as the weeks go on, I've heard it go up to even £120 million. Some people say, which maybe seems a bit outrageous, but I think £100 million is a realistic transfer fee, given what they paid for Jack Grealish. And from that, you'd want them to bring in 3 players. I don't know who they'd bring in, because these days you can't predict. They can bring a player in from anywhere, any country. And they might surprise us. I don't know. It might be somebody I've never heard of. But yeah, and Elliot Anderson would maybe become the star man in a central position, not necessarily playing as a number 10, but just maybe as that sort of creative central midfield player. He'd maybe get a bit more space and take on a bit more responsibility. I think sometimes I feel like they look at Morgan a bit too much to do everything. And sometimes if he's not in the team, they might even thrive. So, but hopefully, as I'll keep on repeating myself, if you visualise it, it will happen. As they say, he's going to be playing for Forest in the Champions League next season. Let's say it out loud, everybody.
I hope so. I hope the light blue kit that we've had this season is the only blue that he's playing in. Let's have a break from Maradona and I's ramblings, and we'll come back to talk about Liam Delap, Evangelos Marinakis, and the potential of European football.
This episode is brought to you by SelectQuote. Life insurance can have a huge impact on our family's future. With SelectQuote, getting covered with the right policy for you is simple and affordable. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents will tailor your experience to find a life insurance policy for your needs in as little as 15 minutes. And SelectQuote partners with carriers that provide policies for many conditions. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Go to selectquote.com/SpotifyPod today to get started.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hello and welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and our Friday 5 podcast, where we look at the biggest Nottingham Forest news stories of the week. It's now time to look at the story of Liam Delap potentially joining the City Ground with Ipswich Town's relegation confirmed. Now there's a £30 million release clause involved in his deal when he came from Manchester City to Ipswich that obviously could be activated. Now Ipswich have had the drop. Now he's going to be certainly a man that's got a lot of signatures or clubs vying for his signature. I think he's impressed and certainly been Ipswich's best player this season, potentially. I've not watched a lot of them, but he's always been a presence, always been an outlet, got a bit of pace, and obviously his age for £30 million of the potential that he has is relative bargain for what you can get, especially with us talking about the price tag for Morgan potentially. So do you think that's the type of profile we'd need? Because I think everybody agrees that we certainly need a striker in the summer window.
Yeah, I mean, profile-wise, definitely 100%. He'd be a fantastic signing. But I think you can look at, Manchester United linked with him, Everton, Arsenal, Chelsea. I think every club in the top half of the division will probably put a bid in. So we're probably unlikely that it would come off. You can see a club like Chelsea just throwing £150,000 at him a week and just say, and it's not necessarily the right move for him. I think a move to Forest would probably be ideal. It'd be coming into a strong squad in a stable environment where a young player can thrive. But as we saw with Jed Spence, that sort of common sense approach doesn't necessarily follow through when the pound signs, as we sort of flashed in front of you. Yeah, I mean, he's the only thing. I've got a couple of friends who are Ipswich fans, and they pointed out quite early on in the season that he's quite a dirty player, and he's always pushing around, getting into fights with centre halves. And ever since they said that, all I ever see him do is sort of pushing around, getting into a bit of argy-bargy, and not necessarily playing football and being a dangerous striker. So I think there is a character flaw to him there slightly, which he needs to be maybe tempered on some of his aggression, because I think at some point that's going to come back and bite him on the bum. But other aggressive players have sort of come through and played well. You think of Cantona and way before you were even born, George, but he plays like Cantona. Shearer had a good aggression about him. So you can channel it and work it to your benefit, but it's a bit more difficult these days with VAR and referees being a bit more whistle happy than they were in the good old days of the 90s era's football.
Particularly Andy Madley, yeah. I mean, if any manager is going to channel the best out of a player, I could see it exactly being Nuno. And I do think as well, I think he's certainly used Ipswich as a stepping stone with the relegation clause. And obviously, if it doesn't go that well for him, he's a number 9 in the Championship. And if it does, he's pretty much got to move to a decent Premier League side, because 30 million for an impressive striker is peanuts these days. But I was thinking in terms of somebody for him, if you put money aside, which, as you mentioned, doesn't often happen and probably won't happen. But if you put money aside and just think about the perfect club for somebody like Delap, who's still young, who's still maybe not 100% proven in the Premier League, coming to somewhere like Forest, where still next season, there's not going to be a huge amount of pressure on them. If they get European football, there's not going to be the expectation that there is going to be for instant success like there will be at your Chelsea's, at your Manchester United's, even if he's seen as the guy to take them back into the top half. Things like that. The lack of pressure in the environment, the young squad that Forest have got, it does make it an attractive proposition, I would think, as a football player. And obviously it's my football club, it's your football club. Of course, we're going to think that. But do you think Forest is maybe a more attractive place to go at the minute than somewhere like Chelsea, if you put the pound signs to one side?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the squad size and just sort of the experience of a lot of players who've gone there, not playing a lot of minutes, and the experience of players who have come to Forest, like Elliot Anderson. They can use him as a shining example of what can happen when you come to Forest. You're guaranteed playing time here. So, I mean, yeah, if I was Delap, I'd sign for Forest straight away. But I don't know if he's as sensible as I am.
Is anybody?
I don't think anybody is, George. No.
Right, let's move on to the final two stories. I suppose we can combine them really because they're very similar. It's the race for Europe and the Marinakis situation. We'll start with Marinakis, who's stepped back from the club in terms of a voting role, if you like, and appointing 3 directors in his place to have the voting power that he does. Now, it's something we all saw coming. I don't think we all realised the deadline was the end of April for it to be done, and Forest were always going to be on top of that. So it's not a huge surprise to see him doing that. I think he's still going to have, of course, the impact and the influence that he does. And the day after it, Forest played Brentford, didn't they, at home? And I sit opposite his seat in the Brian Clough stand I sit. So I see right when he walks up the stairs and hunches down after about 2 or 3 minutes into the game. And I wondered, am I going to see him in that exact seat this time? Sure enough, he was there, luring, lingering. He's still got an impact, hasn't he, Maradona?
Yeah, definitely. It will still have an influence, although we're maybe not supposed to say that out loud.
But I think they know it, don't they, surely?
But he's definitely the driving force, and I think everybody in world football knows that. It's just a bit of admin, isn't it, really? It's just filling in the right forms and hopefully the rules don't change further where they say, hang on, this isn't actually what it's supposed to be like. You're supposed to sell your whole stake, not just put it in a trust. But yeah, I think it was inevitable. It's a pity the deadline was so early. It could have done with being sort of the end of May, because it feels like we've tempted fate by doing it so early.
Yes,
now. And when it came out, we were sort of still pretty certain for Champions League football. Now, a couple of weeks later, it seems a little bit more distant than it did. But yeah, it just had to be done. It's just like paying taxes or whatever. It's just one of those jobs that had to be done. So it's been done now.
Yeah, and we talk about how amazing he is as an owner, but there's been that thing this week about the Red Thread campaign donating official club kits to children across Nottinghamshire. I think that was doubled today. It was announced that the club have doubled that. So it's really good to see him doing things for the community, things for the club. And yeah, we always want him around Nottingham Forest. So hopefully he'll be back, but maybe not in the same capacity, because it would mean Forest to get to Champions League football. Now, if we move on to the race for Europe and Forest's position, obviously they're currently 6th in the Premier League, but only 2 points, I think it is, behind Chelsea. So they're still in the driving seat. They still know that if they win all their 3 games, they do get Champions League football. What a position to be in. I would have laughed at you if you'd even suggested Europe, the Conference League, let alone this position, maybe a year ago when we'd just beaten Sheffield United to maybe get, 3 points ahead of Burnley and Sheffield United. So, wow, what a journey we've been on, Maradona. But how are you feeling ahead of the final 3 games?
Well, I'll say I was a lot more confident after the Spurs game. After that game, I remember thinking to myself, well, all we need is 3 more wins. That's it. Champions League football's ours. We've whittled down the games now, though we've only got 3 games left, and we still only need 3 wins. But one of them is Leicester. And come on, we've got to beat Leicester. Come on. They're one of the worst teams in Premier League history. So if we just keep all our nerves at bay, and the players keep their nerves at bay, more importantly, and just do what they've been doing all season, work hard, we'll play with pace, be clinical, we'll beat Leicester. And there's nothing to worry about. And same for West Ham. West Ham have been terrible all season. We've been good all season. Logic dictates we should beat them. So with a bit of luck, who knows? Even if results go our way, we might even be qualified for the Champions League after the West Ham game. Looking at it in an optimistic way, but yeah, it's nerve-wracking. It would be a horrible consolation prize now to go into the Europa League or Conference. I know we were joking about it in sort of the autumn, going, "Oh yeah, we might get into Europe," and then got into the winter. Hang on, we might even get into the Champions League, and it still didn't seem real then. But now having one hand on it all throughout the winter, to let it go. I don't know if you'll get this reference, George, but in Bullseye, there used to be a game called Bullseye. They used to play darts on the TV on a Sunday afternoon, and the host Jim Bowen used to go to the losing contestant and say, "Have a look at what you could have won." And it used to be a beautiful caravan or speedboat. And I feel like Forest are going to miss out on the speedboat if we don't get into the Champions League. And I don't want to take home the bully tankard and £135 in cash winnings. I want the Champions League and the speedboat. Come on, Forest!
I do love the optimism, Maradona, and I do know Bullseye because there was a Christmas special this year with Luke Littler on. So that is how I know Bullseye. Though probably not with the same host. I don't think Freddie Flintoff was hosting back then, was he? But what I would say in terms of the race is it's all right to feel 2 things at the same time. I think you can feel so proud and so adored by this season because it's been amazing. We've made some incredible memories. We've beaten Manchester City, Liverpool, Manchester United, unthinkable things at the start of the season. And any sort of European football is sensational. But you can also feel disappointed because I don't think the prospect of maybe even European football, particularly Champions League football, felt real until it was taken away from us, until we found ourselves out of it, out of third place that we had been since the Everton game. We'd been second. We never sunk in until we weren't there. But you'd have taken this position in an absolute heartbeat. 3 games, 2 of them against teams, 17th and 18th, and then a last day against one of your rivals at home. It's the first time I've had a final game of the season at home in 7 years, something like that. It's came at such a good time to have that as well. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I cannot wait for it. And I also don't want it to come at all. I just think we need a very momentous, big, transformative performance against Leicester to reignite the fight, reignite the positivity, and go into the final 2 with such the drive and the force that we used to have. And I really hope we're in a position where a draw is enough on Chelsea the last day, because if we have to win, I remember back to the last time that happened, it was against Ipswich in 2017, and we needed to stay up. And Blackburn were winning, we didn't go ahead, then Britta Sambalonga scored, then Chris Cohen scored from miles out, and I ended up on the pitch at the end of the day. So if it can be anything similar to that, I will absolutely take it with a heartbeat. Maradona, are you going to have a good weekend? And how are you feeling ahead of Leicester?
I hope so. I'm confident enough. Okay, I think Leicester, if we can't beat Leicester at home, we don't deserve to be in the Champions League. Let's just put it that way. So, let's just go and just get the job done. Come on. We can do it.
Fingers crossed. I hope so. So thank you, Maradona, for joining me. Thank you for listening as well. Make sure you head to the website. That's the words 1865.football to get all the links to our social media and to platforms where you can listen to the podcast. We'll be back on Monday with a review of the Leicester game, and hopefully Maradona's optimism comes to fruition. And until then, we'll see you soon. Have a good weekend, and come on, you Reds.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey y'all, life's journey is filled with change, growth, and exciting new chapters. Whether you're welcoming a new family member, stepping into a new city, or chasing after your biggest dreams, you need a ride that's built with more space for the grand challenges ahead. The Toyota Grand Highlander is made for those who embrace every twist and turn. With advanced safety features, innovative tech, and a bold, sophisticated design, it's the SUV that adapts with you with room to spare. This spacious beauty seats up to 8, gives you up to 97.5 cubic feet of cargo space, and has a diverse engine lineup, available in gas or hybrid options, including the powerful 362 horsepower Hybrid Max. Plus, available all-wheel drive means you'll have confidence no matter where life takes you. Ready to take on your dreams? The Grand Highlander is more than a vehicle. It's your partner in embracing all life throws at you. From daily routines to unexpected adventures, it's up for every grand challenge. Learn more at Toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.